Welcome to YogiViews, where my guest is yoga itself, through interviewing those who practice it, teach it, sell it, or simply love it. I am Antonio Sausis. Even though one of man's most important traits is to get things done, what emphasizes the material aspects of being a man, men have been involved in spirituality for centuries. Yoga and Buddhism are some of the most prominent spiritual disciplines these days. While yoga has been embraced largely by women in the West, Buddhism seems to be practiced more evenly by both sexes. More and more men are understanding the specific benefits yoga brings to us. What can Buddhism bring to the modern man? How can it help men tap into their masculine spiritual wisdom? To answer these questions, I invited today Dharmachari Prasadachitta. Welcome to the show. He is an ordained member of the Triratna Buddhist Community and teaches meditation, yoga, and Buddhism at the San Francisco Buddhist Center. What was your first experience with yoga as related to you as a man?
Well, yoga, actually, I suppose I first started at a gym, now that I recall. And I'd forgotten that, actually, that there was one particular class where I started at a gym, 24-hour fitness, I believe. And I remember a male teacher saying to me, "That's right, yoga is hard." And I didn't go back. He was like a drill sergeant or something. But it was hard, and it was a bunch of postures that I didn't really want to be in. Yeah.
So you were actually traumatized.
I was a little bit traumatized.
By a male teacher.
Yeah.
Now, in the West, mostly women practice yoga.
Yeah.
Not everywhere. It's not in the whole West the same, but particularly in the United States, we can say that very clearly. What is the case of Buddhism? Is it practiced also by more women or not?
My community has more women than men, at least locally. I don't think that's true globally. Yeah, so I'm not actually sure, but it does seem like there's some degree more women, but there's probably more equality in the numbers than there is in yoga by far. Yeah.
Now, I believe also that the larger number of scholars and teachers in Buddhism are male. Is that correct?
It kind of seems that way. I think some of the most effective scholars historically are actually women. But it does seem like, in my experience, there's just a greater number of scholars who are male, and that might just be because of the patriarchy of academia. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Now, did the Buddha have anything to say about this? Because there's a popular story that says that Buddha didn't actually was not that keen on women teaching, that actually his mother or someone very close to him had to come and try to intercede, and still he said no.
Yeah. Yeah, in the traditional story is that Ananda, the traditional account, is that Ananda, who is like his cousin and his sort of best friend and accompanied him everywhere, was a bit of an advocate for the women. And he was imploring the Buddha to allow the women to practice the going forth. And the going forth was to leave the household life completely, to wear the equivalent of rags, but very, very simple clothing, and to wander, living on begging. So that was what...
Leaving their children.
Leaving everything, whether they had children or not. So the going forth was what the Buddha had asked that women not do. It wasn't that they couldn't practice. Now, this is the traditional account, and I actually, I'm dubious of this particular account. Some scholars have analyzed it and seen that there's a certain discontinuity in the story that kind of makes it seem like this one was sort of slipped in there a little later by some, but I don't know. There are Buddhists who sort of rationalize it by pointing out that that women had a lot more to fear from praying men, basically. That if a woman was not under the protection of men, they were likely going to be raped or killed, especially if they just wandered around in the jungle. So there's different ways to look at it. But it certainly wasn't the Buddha saying that women couldn't become awakened. If there was such a decision, it was definitely practical.
Now, for example, in yoga for pretty much 6,000 years, women were not allowed to teach yoga or to dwell in the philosophical aspects of yoga. They did have their practices, and their practices were even specific for women, but they were not allowed to teach. Do you think that this is something? No, not in Buddhism. So
there was no stipulation that they couldn't teach. The patriarchal structures of Buddhism, which were definitely very strong, had it that the highest monk, or the most senior nun could never be above the most senior monk. And again, this is justified because the notion is that meant that nun was under the protection of that monk, and that if a woman wasn't under protection in traditional India, they were fair game. I don't know all of that, whether it's true or not. But certainly, historically speaking, the vast majority of recognized teachers were men. But not without, the tradition is not without some very influential and beautiful teachings from women, going all the way back to the Buddha's time. Yeah.
Now, what does Buddhism have for men? For us men?
For a man.
For a man, yeah.
Well, I have to say it has the same thing for men and women. I think the practice of Buddhism is one which necessitates a kind of integration. Integration in the sense that one recognizes all the aspects of oneself, which I think for a man is often a lot of femininity, really. So, I mean, it's interesting, we could talk about bringing out masculinity, but I think what a man often needs is to recognize how feminine they are, in a certain sense.
In what sense?
In the sense that they're vulnerable, just like women. In the sense that they desire and want the recognition of others. Yeah. And, we might call those feminine things. I don't know if people do or not, but they need to be recognized, and I think that men tend not to recognize them as much. So, in that sense,
you mean that women tend to feel more invulnerable, or?
I think they tend to be more willing to recognize their own vulnerability, and in fact, also recognize their dependence upon others, not just men, but others in society. And I think men can sort of barrel forward with a kind of focus where they don't necessarily acknowledge how much support they get on the side and behind and above and below. And, maybe that's one dimension of integration. I'm sure, we all have our particular kind of integration. We all have something we're not looking at in the corner of our eyes, or paying attention to, or acknowledging about what's happening with us. And speaking of men as a generality is a difficult thing to do.
Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And we all men have certain things in common.
Yes,
So
there are some things.
That's true as well.
Yes.
Both things are true. Now, Buddhism being so big in the understanding of the mind,
Yeah.
I would imagine that it recognizes that the mind in women and men does not function the same way. In some very general terms, it does, of course, but then there are some differences as well. Does Buddhism contemplate those differences or not?
I haven't encountered any traditional or textual descriptions of the way the mind works that delineate male or female aspects. So in that sense, no. And it's true that Buddhism does have a very detailed map, so to speak, of the mind and what is desirable, what is positive, what is beautiful, and what is destructive, what is difficult, what is ugly. And it's this very beautiful map that you can go into and look at. And I could talk about how, women might have some of the more beautiful qualities more often than men might, but my guess would be that that's potentially cultural more than sort of intrinsic to being man or woman. I'm not really sure.
And lately, more and more men are practicing yoga.
Yes.
A bit because perhaps some of those other male students that were in that first class, they were, when the teacher told you, this is hard, that's right.
Yeah.
Some men like that.
Yeah.
And so a lot of men that have thought originally, well, yoga is so passive, so quiet, now are discovering that there are some other styles that can give you a good workout, that can, okay. One of the areas where also men practice yoga and are interested in yoga is sexual performance, where yoga has a lot to say.
Yeah.
Does Buddhism in any way address that for a man or not, in any possible way?
To the degree that Buddhism as a tradition talks about sexual energy, which I'm pretty sure that there's a certain amount of it being recognized and talked about in a transformative manner. But it's important to understand that generally speaking, it's transformed for another purpose, not for the purpose of sexual pleasure. So, that would be the Tantra.
Yes.
And I don't know a lot about it, but I do know that in a sense, in principle, and I'm aware of this in my own Buddhist practice, one recognizes the things that have strong effects on you, like sexual desire, sexual apprehension, or sexual perception. There's a whole mode of perception. When sex is on the mind, that's what you see. Your whole orientation, physical and mental, kind of like a constellation right around that, right? So when things are that powerful, they have a lot of potential for recognizing the way things are, the dependently co-arisen nature of things, how mind gives rise to body and how body gives rise to mind, right? So because these powerful forces can be seen, can be recognized, and in that recognition one can actually see the vulnerability that, rather than just pursuing the object of this transformative experience, which is to see a beautiful woman or to see a beautiful man, one just recognizes, wow, this is what it's like to have a mind. Because if you're just nonplussed about things and not really thinking about things, it's can be hard to see how captivating, how transforming perception can be. So, to the degree that Buddhism talks about sex, it talks about it in that way, as an object of understanding the incredible nature of being. To the degree of like just cultivating a more pleasurable experience, traditionally it's just not on the books, so to speak. But I will say that as a Buddhist who's married and who has practiced long periods of celibacy,
while being married.
Just as like on retreat, like in one instance for 4 months on a retreat, sort of cloistered, wow, it's quite an experience to open up those gates again. So, you could, that wasn't the goal, but like to spend all of that time and effort, and I spent this 4 months with just men, and to cultivate friendship and kindness and clarity and just have your whole being about being clear and simple and undistracted. And then to be like, okay, I'm going home and just opening up the mind to that transformative experience of being captivated by femininity is quite a roller coaster ride and incredibly powerful. So, if you want to talk, basically, certain healthy modes of abstention for long periods of time can have an incredible impact on one's sexual potential. I mean, that's clear, but that's not the goal.
No.
It's just a byproduct.
Yes, but in a way what you're saying, because you were bringing up Tantra today, and in Tantra Yoga there are two very clear ways of understanding sex, even though sex may be seen as divine in both sides. There's the ones that say if sex is a problem, don't ever do it until you understand the nature of the problem. And there's others that say if sex is a problem, do it as much as you don't have it as a problem anymore. So it seems that Buddhism stands more on the side of celibacy as a practice.
I think that's accurate. Although Buddhism is process-oriented. It's not specific action-oriented. And so what that means is there are external and internal conditions. You have external and internal conditions. External conditions have an effect on your mind. Your mind has an effect on your external conditions. But basically, both conditions can change over time. So while Buddhism would say celibacy is a positive condition under which to cultivate one's mind, it doesn't mean that it's the best condition at any given point. Because it's process-oriented. The point is not necessarily to simply throw yourself into a situation where the things you're attached to are going to cause you such anxiety, such longing that one can't even cultivate, if that makes sense. So some people, their practice for now is to have a caring, loving relationship whereby they have healthy sex in order to on that basis, cultivate more clarity, cultivate bodhi, cultivate the awakening mind. And at some point, that will lead them to a place where they can understand their relationship to sex such that they can then practice celibacy. Does that make sense? So that it's process-oriented. But certainly, along the process, celibacy is out there, definitely as a positive goal to get to. not as a goal in and of its own, meaning it's not a goal. Well, who cares? The point is that at some point, it's a healthy condition to bring Bodhi or awakening to its full potential.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Or what in yoga would be to realize God.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, in Buddhist practice, if I'm not wrong, particularly in your school, sometimes you do separate men and women for practice.
That's right.
What for?
I'm not sure if I can say all the reasons, but my understanding, is that at least from one perspective, from a heterosexual perspective, and that's important because many people are not, it simplifies the complication of, just being intoxicated by women. There's a certain way that we gravitate towards wanting their attention and their recognition, and maybe the subtle competitiveness between men about that. That's a kind of cliche way of looking at it, but it's all there. There are dimensions of that basically complicate
distraction
and distract. So what we want to cultivate is a kind of even-minded kindness where we take each other in. We listen to each other's stories. We want to understand each other. And in order to do that more evenly, sometimes we divide men from women so that I can learn to take in a man in a loving, open way. And then I can go back into a co-ed situation and be like, I see that I'm doing this, and I can actually work a little bit against it, try and be a little more even-minded towards men and women. So it's that. Now I have a friend, a good friend of mine who is a lesbian woman, and she went on a similar long retreat with women, and it wasn't simple for her.
Well, this is what I was going to ask you, because I understand that you teach in the gay community.
Yes.
Somehow, and what you're saying exactly, that for men, women could be distracted, but for, I would imagine, gay guys, it would be very distracting to go to a just man yoga, much more if it's naked yoga or one of those things that San Francisco is full of.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my answer to that is just, we'll have to look at cultivating other conditions. And that particular tool isn't available to somebody who's attracted to the same sex.
Yeah, yeah. Have you found teaching in, let's say, in both worlds or in both sides of the world, have you found that there is any difference in regards to the men practicing Buddhism or gay men practicing Buddhism?
I've I guess seen a lot of different differences. I mostly find differences in just particular communities rather than like whether they're gay or whether they're not. I mean, I enjoy going to the Gay Buddhist Fellowship at the San Francisco Buddhist Center, and it's not on our program. They're their own community. They just rent our space on Sundays. And I mean, truthfully, I just started going because I was actually interested in, it was at the center that I go to all the time, and I was interested in going to a community that didn't know who I was, who didn't see me as a influential member of the community. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed just being somebody, you know, and I didn't wear this, and I, you know, and that was good. And I basically really come to respect them as a practice community, you know, just for the very specific things that gay men have to deal with, the prejudice, the being raised in religions that essentially cultivate hatred for yourself. I mean, it's very, very palpable when you listen in a practice community to the stories of where people come from and how they were trained to hate themselves. And mostly these are older gay men. It's not quite as common with younger gay men, which is thankful.
Because they're not religious.
Just because society isn't quite as virulent as it used to be with regard to how it treats gay men, at least more broadly speaking. I'm sure certain corners are. But yeah, also there's a lot of them who went through this period of the AIDS epidemic, and and it's just amazing to talk to these people who didn't think they were going to get old, you know, and now they're old and they're trying to deal with that. They're like, I thought I was going to die 20 years ago, you know, and now I didn't think I was going to have to deal with wrinkly skin and like, you know, and they have an incredible, these people who went through that and, you know, are able to live such long time with a disease they thought was going to kill them. It's an incredible perspective. They have a lot of wisdom through that. Yeah.
Now, what piece of wisdom do you think Buddhism brings, particularly for men?
Particularly for men?
Particularly, yes, particularly. You know, and it could be just for every man or just for you as a man, you know, that I understand what you said, that we all benefit and Buddhism benefits everybody.
I think particularly for men. I'm not sure if I have an answer for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would require me to have an idea of men that I'm not sure I have. Just in the sense that, like, I think people are a lot more. I think usually the thing that people need doesn't have that much to do with whether they're a man or a woman. The thing people really need, and what that is actually very particular to people. You know, we're all tied in knots, and our knots are all our own, and we have to learn how to untie them ourselves. Each one of us has our own bit of the knot, and some of those strings are attached to others. So we need a little help in untying the knot from usually particular people, maybe your mom or your dad or your brothers or your community. But anyway, I'm not sure that, you know, perhaps men can particularly come to a more open, caring relationship with their father through Buddhism, if you're going to say anything.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Well, and certainly that is very important, especially in this part of the world where the relationship with family is not necessarily cultivated.
No, it's a bit disconnected.
It's more disconnected. So I can see how for men to be in a relationship that includes dynamics and love with their fathers.
With another man.
Yeah, with another man and with the fathers.
That's right.
So there you go.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's one of the benefits of your community, just doing it for men when you guys separate.
That's right.
Okay.
I totally think so.
Well, wonderful. Thank you very much. I have to say it's the first time that I have the opportunity to speak here in the show with a Buddhist about this, and interesting to find the places where we all meet.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. My guest today was Dharmachari Prasadachitta. He is an ordained member of the Triratna Buddhist Community and teaches meditation, yoga, and Buddhism at the San Francisco Buddhist Center. I hope you liked our show today. And if you care to let me know, shoot me an email at antonio@yogiviews.com. I look forward to seeing you the next time.